Today I'm going to tell you about the 10 most desirable e-mountain bikes according to the MTBR audience. Francis here from MTBR, and I've tested a lot of e-bikes and I have my opinions about them, but what better way to find out what's hot rather than to ask the user base themselves, the ones who want to buy an e-bike with their own money. So we did a poll, about 21 questions, over 1,000 people responded just last week, and the number one question that I want to cover today is, what are you going to buy next? You know, given these options, what e-mountain bike are you going to buy next? Okay, so I'm going to give you the first 10 and give you some of the reasons why I think they ranked so high among the actual buyers. So number one is the specialized Levo. So the Levo is now in generation 3, the third version of a pretty groundbreaking design, and what they have new is a bike that feels rides a lot lighter than what it is. It's about a 50-pound bike, but it rides like a 34-pound bike. So really amazing feat, and it's very expensive at Carbon Pro and S-Works, but people are expecting it to hit the lower price points in the next couple months. So, you know, about $8,000 or whatnot. Very powerful motor, very good software, a new display, and just a seamless natural feel is what the Levo offers. It looks good too, with a hidden battery that's huge, 700 watt hours. Okay, number two, with 24% of the votes, is Santa Cruz with their new Bullet. You know, it's 2 years ago they weren't even in the e-bike game, but they came out with the Heckler last year. It was okay, just okay, you know, trying to hit the top 10. But this one rockets into number 2. Why? Because everything they learned about the Heckler, you know, always stepping stones, right? Or baby steps, you know, they incorporated into this new Bullet. And what they have is a bike that's a lot more rad, more modern geometry, a lot more active, more plus suspension, and most important, they implemented the mullet wheel size. So small in the back, bigger in the rear, and this is perfect for e-bikes because it counters the weight of a motor, and also the room that the motor takes. You know, the smaller wheel doesn't need as much room. Couple that with the introduction of the latest motor from Shimano called the EP8 and a bigger battery. You know, the Bullet's well on its way. A little downside is the motor does have a knock, you know, kind of like a chain slap when you're coasting. And the bike's in short supply, like most of the bikes in this one, in this list, and also a little bit expensive, but it does have price points. Okay, number 3 on the list should be no surprise, except that it's a surprise that Santa Cruz kind of surpassed it. So maybe they were kind of sleeping behind the wheel. It is Trek. Trek is the first company when it comes to e-bikes in the USA, but you know they've kind of worked slow at it. You know, very conservative, very concerned about trail access, and they've really hung on to the Bosch system, and the Bosch system wasn't that good 5-6 years ago. So, but now Bosch system is one of the best, you know, with the Bosch Generation 4, and Trek put that in their slash in what came out to be the Trek Rail. So it really blew away their expectations. They didn't even really have much fanfare about this bike, but every rider who knew e-bikes realized this bike is special. So it is a bump-eating, rock-eating monster with 29er front and 29er rear. Long and slack, a lot of travel, 150, 160, and it does really well on the most demanding terrain. You know, downside, it's got a little bit of a knock, and the motor is not super quiet when coasting, and you know, it's not the hardest to change direction with. You know, it's kind of a monster truck, which is cool. But if you have super tight terrain, maybe it's not the best. But another upside is a great dealer network, a lot of support, and a lot of price points, all the way from I think 5,500 to over 10,000. Okay, number 4 is another surprise. It is the rise of Orbea, Spanish company, with the Orbea Rise. It's pretty crazy, you know, that the U.S. a lot of U.S. California people are just running out and buying the Orbea Rise. You know, even though they've never heard of the brand, the bike just checks a lot of boxes on the buyer's list, and it appeases a lot of fears and concerns. Mainly that the bike is too heavy. The e-bike is too heavy. I can't lift it. I can't turn it. Or the e-bike has not enough power, you know, like the Levo SL. I won't be able to keep up with my other e-bike buddies. So Orbea, what they did is they got their lightest platform, 150 travel, and said, let's make it as light as possible, and let's get the EP8 motor, and because it's small enough and light enough, and just kind of handcuff its top end power, muzzle it a little bit, put a restrictor plate. That way we can put a small battery and still keep that range. And it turns out to be a simple but genius move, because they came out with a 35.5-pound bike with a motor that's quite powerful, 60 Newton meters, and the range is pretty decent. You know, if you stay in the low power modes that the Levo SL sits at. So good bike, new geometry, very flexible platform. You could spec it however you want, Minions and Fox 36, and you can also spec it at 35.5 pounds. So short supply as well, but you know, like most, these are the desirable bikes. I'm not saying the bikes that are easiest to buy right now, right? So tied for number 5 are 2 consumer direct, manufacturer direct companies from Europe, YT with their Decoy and Canyon with their Spectral On. So very interesting bikes because they deliver so much for the money. One of the main concerns by folks is, man, they cost a lot. You know, you can't touch anything under close to 5,000. You know, you almost have to always go 7. But these 2 companies, because they're consumer direct, you know, they're able to offer you more for the money, and they're good brands. You know, reputable. They're proven themselves in the mountain bike market, and so when it comes to e-bikes, their support system is okay. Mind you, they're still online, so it's still quite a bit more difficult than just driving to your dealer and say, hey, fix my controller, change my motor. So the YT has their Decoy, a little bit long in the tooth, but introduced 3 years ago, it was groundbreaking. You know, it just had an old motor, the Shimano E8000, but tried and true, very reliable, and they've since come out with many versions. The mullet version is the most interesting, but what they have is really a lot. They offer a lot for the money, 4,500, 55, and I believe 6,500, and really dialed bikes. And when the new version comes out, the EP8 with a bigger battery, then it's gonna be, you know, we're pretty sure, you know, quite an attractive option. But even if you bought the old one, the existing one, you're still fine. The other one is the Canyon Spectral On, with many price points. I believe starting at $5,500, and it is a fascinating bike because it is so affordable, from Germany, and it's got beautiful Shimano components and Fox, and you're like, where are they getting this? You know, how are they pricing this, and why is it so much cheaper? So what you have is a mullet with 150, 160 travel. So all the details are pretty dialed. You know, just a lot of design features that are unique to Canyon, and they really did a lot to make these bikes handle and feel pretty natural. Downside is it has the EP8 motor knock, and you know, That's about it, you know, dealing with the manufacturer direct. Okay, we're down to the home stretch, 7, 8, 9, 10, and number 7 is Pivot. Pivot has just one bike. It's the Switchblade. It was revolutionary when it was introduced, I don't know, four years ago, with the Shimano E8000 motor, the best bike available. And I bought one. I bought my review bike, and I was so happy with it. But you know, I just needed something with a more modern motor, a bigger battery, eventually, and that's what they came up with. They have a new version with the Shimano EP8 and a much bigger battery, 730 watt hours, the biggest of this whole list. So it rides real good. They modernized it quite a bit. Mullet now, you know, the proper wheel size for most e-bikes. The downside is, you know, it looks old, you know, because it looks exactly the same as it did 4 years ago, and it's expensive, about 11,000 bucks, and they don't offer a lot of price points. Next one on the list is the Rocky Mountain. The Rocky Mountain is a super interesting bike. I believe it's called the Power Play, and what they have, 150 travel bike, and they have their own motor. Most of these bikes are really handcuffed by the motor they choose, because the motor defines about 60% of the bike automatically. Defines how it looks, it defines how it performs in a lot of ways. So Rocky Mountain said, we don't want to be hampered by that. We are going to design our own motor, since they have a big Canadian conglomerate company, and it's very powerful. 110 Newton meters, the most powerful e-bike motor around. At the same time, it is power hungry, and what they did, so even though they had a 600 watt hour battery, it was still eating up that battery like it was a 500. So they now have an extender battery. So give you those options for your short rides and your big weekend long adventures. Downsides is the geometry is a little bit aged, a little bit of a short bike, but we expect this whole thing to be revamped pretty soon. So finally, number 9 and 10, Norco and Giant. So Norco is, you know, took a chance. They entered the e-bike market with the range, a very aggressive bike, coil, crazy geometry, but it turns out it's what the e-bike market needed. You know, you don't want to be so concerned about weight and pedaling that you're not using what the platform gives you. And the range really took advantage of that with big active travel, and it's got an affordable price point as well. The next one is Giant. Giant, obviously tried and true company, and they were able to get their motors from Yamaha, a little bit different from the rest, but these motors turned out to be nice and powerful, and they were able to put them in their full suspension bikes and some of their hardtails. You know, they have the price points. You know, since they have the volumes required, they're able to deliver this bike, you know, 5,000, 6,000. So attractive market, and people are expecting good things to come from Giant and, you know, and the Giant dealer network. And finally, the stuff that didn't make the top 10, we have Comensal, direct to consumer. They're just killing it with their aluminum bikes, and Scott, Niner. You know, these are just companies that are just knocking on the door of the top 10. So there you go. What stage are you in the e-bike process? Have you tried one, or are you ready to pull the trigger? The trigger is a credit card. Let me know in the comments which one of these bikes speaks to you. But I'll offer one piece of advice before I leave, which is biking is hot. Mountain biking is hot because of pandemic, shelter in place. But e-mountain biking is a couple notches above in the hot scale. Like if you want an e-mountain bike today, it's very difficult. So, and it's going to get more difficult as the summer progresses. So make up your mind. Don't be too picky about test rides and what do you call that, colors. The best e-mountain bike you can have is the one you can have in your hands. Because you can enjoy the rest of the year with it. And yeah, and even though it's big money and it might not be the perfect bike for you, you're not going to lose a lot. The resale value of these things is tremendous because the demand is far outpacing supply. So thank you very much.